So let's look at how to do sentiment analysis in Google Sheets. We're going to do it based on a line by line, but also analyzing the entire data set. So let's jump right in. So we're going to create a quick script that's going to ping ChatGPT and give us a response. So you want to create an API key using OpenAI.com. And then we'll go ahead and jump in here. So we're going to create a function, and it doesn't necessarily matter what this is called. I'm just going to call it AI sentiment, and we're going to write a function here. And then we need to add our API key here. So I'm going to do a sample demo one here, and then you'll use your own for this. And so now in our function here, so what we're going to do is we're going to accept an input. And so for example, I might do AI sentiment here and put this cell as the input. And so that's going to return as text. So we'll put text in there, and then I'll show you how to adjust this when we're doing a full column in this one. But for now, we're going to get a single text. And so we need to start with our URL. And so this will be URL, and this is going to be API, openai.com, version 1, and we're going to use the responses endpoint. And so then we need to put together an options for our request. And this can be pretty simple. We need our header so we can include our authorization. And so that's just going to be authorization and then a colon. And we're going to do bearer space. And then we're going to add that API key just like that, comma. And then we're going to tell it what content type. And so you don't necessarily need to know how this works, but this is going to be JSON is what we're going to end up using here. And so there's our headers. And then we need a payload. This is how we're going to send the data to it. And so we're going to JSON stringify and then use a object. And then inside here, we're going to do things like tell it what model we're going to use. And so in this case, we're just going to use the 4.0 model. And then we'll use the mini. And then we're going to include instructions. And then I'll come back to that in a second. And then input, and this will be our text. So let's make sure I need a comma here, if you have that there showing up. So instructions, we're going to fill that in a second, and our text is already in place. And so that's good. And then we basically have our options in place. So let's get our request ping. So we'll do this response equals to URL fetch app. And we're going to do fetch on the URL and the options. And then we'll get a response back. And so we'll call that data. And so now we're going to have to parse this. And that's just how it works when you transport data back and forth. And so we're going to do response and get content text. So at this point, we're going to get a response. And we're going to console log this so I can show you how we're going to get that data out of there. And so we need to fill in these instructions. So instead of sitting here typing this out, I'm just putting in some instructions here. Your sentiment analysis tool, positive, negative, or neutral, and a score like this. And so I'm keeping this very structured, +5 or -4 with a single space. And the reason why is because I'm going to split that into our sentiment and a score. Now you could dish this and just say, give me a brief summary, something like that, but however you want to do that. So I'm trying to keep the cost down on this one. So that's why I'm doing it like that. So this is enough to get our response, and then we'll basically log it back to the sheet. And so let's go ahead and do this. So we're not going to see anything at the moment, but we are going to log something. So we'll do B4, which is the cell. And then it's not going to return anything yet. So I should probably actually do return something there. And we'll fill this in a second. So it's done. Obviously, we didn't return anything. So let's go to executions. And then let's check this out. Actually, I think it's maybe this one. Here we go. So here's what we got back from ChatGPT. So different things like the ID, all this kind of stuff. There's instructions we sent it. And then what we need is this output. And so we go back, let's see, output and content. So let's get to that first. So we'll do output, and this is going to be 0. And let me show you why real quick here. So we go back here, output, and then we have this bracket. So that's an array. And so inside array, we're going to have to do 0, and that will get us to here. And then here, we can do content. And I think content, we're going to have to do 0 again because we have another object just like this. So if we do output 0, content 0, that should get us to inside there. So output 0, content 0. And this is basically how I'm getting into the innards of that. And so let's go ahead and just actually return that real quick. So we'll just say let result equals 2. And we'll see what this gets us back. So let return result. At this point, this should update automatically here because basically it's rerunning every time I'm saving the script. But let's go ahead and just clear that out, rerun it manually. Now I think we're going to have to do one more thing here. So let's do console log and result. And then we'll trigger this one again here. So I'm just going to go ahead and clear this out, run again, and then go back to executions. Pinged it there. So I think it's probably this one here. We'll see if we get a result. So there's our final one. So there it is. Our +5 is inside this text. And so we can go to our final thing. It's going to be .text. And then instead of a single result like this, so this will pop up. There it is, +5. I want to split it. So that way I can summarize and add up that score or average it, probably more likely. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to split this by a space, and then I'm going to put it inside an array bracket here so it returns in the same row. So at this point, there we go. And let's just check one thing. So average before D. And so currently it's text. So that's one thing we're going to adjust for here. I'm going to do 0, which is going to be the first one. So that's going to be that positive, negative, whatever. And then comma, and I'm going to do 1, and that will get us our number. But I'm going to do parse int, and it's going to force it to a number. So now at this point, go back here, it went like that. So I need to go one more here, bracket. So that should do it. There we go. And now we can average that out. So now we drag this down a little bit. We can see those scores populating through. Now what happens if we come down here and let's paste this into like this neutral mix review. So we can see neutral. Bring a couple more in. That was actually a 3. It's interesting. Neutral mixed. I guess this is a mixed review there. But now we have this average populating. All right, so let's jump into this one. So this one, I want to, instead of going one by one, I want to analyze the whole thing at once. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole function. And we'll do this overall sentiment. And you can call this whatever you want. Now, the only thing with this is if we're doing multiple cells, so for example, if I do something like, it's not going to come in as a single piece of text. It's going to come in as an array. And so we kind of been dealing with arrays a little bit with these brackets here. So what we're going to have to do here then is we'll do this. So let's change this one to array. And then we're just going to convert it. So text equals array join, and let's do something like this, which will make a new line in the text. And so now we're going to say, I got an error because this is single quotes here. So I'm going to change this to a backtick so I can include single quotes in my response here. And then we don't need this anymore. So we just do return result because we're going to just get text back. And so we want all to come in the same thing. So now if we do AI overall sentiment, and then this was B4 to B50, I think. Just double check. 53. And then hit enter, and then that should load up. And there's our overall sentiment analysis. So you can do this with a large data set. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this may use more tokens. And so when you set this up with ChatGPT, you're probably going to have to buy maybe $5 or something like that worth. Depending upon how much analysis you're doing, you may need to purchase a little bit more to reflect all this. So that's it for today's video on how to use ChatGPT to bring in AI sentiment analysis into your Google Sheets. Make sure to check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets and AppScript. And as always, have a great day.